Welcome to the Jaybe show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. It's so good to see all of you here on this Sunday afternoon. Today is May 19th, 2024. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here. Come on in, welcome, and have a seat. Sit on down. Hopefully you guys got yourself some tea. I got mine all ready and set to go. This is going to be a great show. I am so happy to see all of you here. Shout out to all you guys. Cheers. This tea is hot and it's good. We're about to get into it. Just to let you guys know, the JB show is every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys would like to, you guys can tune in to me there. You can also tune in on Revolutionary Blackout on the Savvy and JB show on Thursdays. So if you guys have not already, go ahead and tune into that. If you guys have not, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe because that pushes us out into the algorithm so that we can be able to reach more people. I know that this is a channel, but one of the things that we also try to do is do some work on the ground as well. We don't just want to talk the talk. We also want to walk the walk. So being able to assist us, being able to get the word out there so that we can push the message of, more class consciousness and also solidarity with those of us who are marginalized, that helps out the best. So thank you so very much for that. If you guys have not also, you guys can go to revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever we go live or upload clips. So you guys have that ready there as well. Also, any email inquiries, if you guys would like to, you guys can go to revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. This gives us if you guys have any news that you guys would like to share with us, any inquiries about things that we're doing on the ground, what have you, you guys have that email there as well. So thank you so very much to everybody who has participated so far. Big shout out to the patrons on Patreon. We'll get the patron shout out a little bit later on the show. While we're here, we're watching on Facebook, Facebook, YouTube, Rockfin, and Rumble. So good to see all of you here. We're going to say hello to all the people in the chat. Good to see, starting off with Dabby Dab says, at fam, hello, good to see you. My comrade from RBN, Nick Cruz, coming in saying like and share, support our dear brother James. Thank you so very much, Nick. It is good to see you in the chat. All here and accounted for. We have CBC voter coming in saying happy Sunday at JB, and there's Nick. Yes, it's always lovely to see Nick in here. All right, Terry Connolly says good afternoon, comrades. All right, Terry Connolly coming in. Yo mama so fat 77 says sup. All right, that's a funny ass name. Hob says good morning from California, comrades. Good to see you, Hob. All right, Golden Monarch coming in saying, morning, JB. Good morning and peace to you, Golden Monarch, as well. Wesley Donaldson say, good morning. Good to see you, Wesley. Jacqueline coming in saying, good afternoon, JB and everyone. Nice to have you. We have Millie 3-piece says, hey, JB. Hey, Millie. Dr. Nick Riviera says, hi, everybody. Hello, Dr. Nick. We have Daryl coming in saying, solidarity. Good to see you, Daryl. What's up, bruh? All right. Yo, mama so fat. I love that name. That name just giving me life right now. All right. We have Back from the Road says, did it freeze for y'all? If I froze, please let me know. I hope not. Freeze! Everybody clap your hands. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. Anisha says, good afternoon to all from Uruguay. Hello from Uruguay. Good to see you. Nice to have you. I hope you can stay for a while. All right. Anita Purchase says, Anita Purchase. Good morning to everyone. Good to see you in here. We have in the Rumble side, Go Start coming in saying hello. Yes, good to see you. Oh, in the words of Nick, what's poppin', my friends, my family. Back, those of you who remember back in the old school Fred Hampton Leftist days when Nick had the microphone right here, he'd be there like some late night DJ, where it's the grown and sexy time. Hello, what's poppin', my friends, my family? Good to see y'all here on Fred Hampton Leftist. Yo, he used to do that thing like it was like the Quiet Storm, bruh. I missed that, bro. Nick, you got to bring that back. You got to bring that back. All right, we have Andy Panda says, "All right, the Lord is in the house. Hope your health is in a good place. You're a good." Ah, Andy, thank you. That means the most to me. Thank you so much. I'm trying, man. I'm trying to do the best I possibly can for what I got. Thank you. That means a lot. Amanda says, I was on the wrong video on my phone. What is up? I am so excited for Jaybe on a Sunday. Yes, Jaybe on a Sunday. Easy like Sunday morning. All right, we have CB42261 says, new member here. Love this chat. Welcome. Nice to have you. Put your feet up, take your shoes off, and grab some cookies and some milk. All right. That's what we about. All right. Social emotional learning with Dr. Donnie says, hey, it's time. It is time. All right. Yeah. But you know what? You grew into it, bro. You definitely grew into it. Ellen Dubner says, hi, everyone. Hello, Ellen. Good to see you in here. All right. So let's check on the Rock fan. Let's see if there's anybody saying hello. All right. People a little bit shy on the Rock fan, but we got the Rumble side. We got the Twitch side. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about my channel. The Rumble side, the Rock fan side, the YouTube side, and the Facebook side. Good to see all of you here watching today. Now, let's get into what we're going to be talking about. We got 4 stories. 4. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. What do we have going on here? Well, there was so many things I had to put up that I couldn't even fit it all in the title. UAW strikes for Palestine. Yes. We're going to talk about this because most of these stories are actually positive stories. Well, I say 2 of these stories are positive stories. 2 of them are kind of heavy, but we're going to do those. So the UAW strikes for Palestine, that's going to be an interesting story. I can't wait to get into. We're also going to be getting into a little bit later the Office for Missing Black Women. We're going to be talking about our Black women and girls. This is a story that has a positive ending to it. We're going to get into this. I cannot wait because this is something that I think is absolutely necessary. We need this type of thing to happen in this country. Also, there is some disturbing news about the Baltimore bridge collapse. I'm going to be getting into that story too. And this goes into workers and why we need to change the system, not just here, but around the world. And then the first story we're going to cover is right now about meat packing plants and how workers are exploited and these corporations just do not care. So let's get into that right now. When you go into work, you do not expect to lose a limb. When you go into work, you're not expecting to be harmed, and you're expecting that the company that you work for to put proper precautions in place so that you are not harmed at all. There's certain contingencies that need to be put in place in order for you to be able to come into work the next day. But that's not the case for a lot of workers, because when profit is the sole motive, well, of course, your safety is on the back burner. There was a story that actually came out that was shared to me. Shout out to you, Roger Meadows, for pointing this story out to me. I want to go into this. One of the first things I'm going to do is we're going to go into the article in a second, but I want to talk about details. And this is out of the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center actually gives a testimony about how workers are treated in meatpacking plants in the United States. So let's get into this. And the sound is not as clear as I would like for it, but we shall press on.
My name is Tom Fritchie, and I'm a staff attorney for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Under Article 5 of the American Convention on Human Rights, every person has the right to have his physical, mental, and moral integrity respected. Yet every day, workers in the United States meatpacking and poultry industries face brutal working conditions. These industries violate the fundamental human rights of many workers who come from all over the hemisphere by systematically exploiting the lack of work speed safety regulations in the United States. The U.S. in turn negligently permits these industries to inflict disabling harm on thousands of employees. The overwhelming majority of poultry processing and meatpacking workers suffer severe and crippling injuries due to tendon, nerve, joint, and bone damage caused by dangerous working conditions. And the most pervasive injuries are caused by fast work speeds. The industry's massive disassembly lines can slaughter and process 400 head of cattle an hour, or 10,000 chickens per hour.
Now let's stop right there. 400 head of cattle per hour. Have you ever been near a cow? Those are not small animals. Cows are huge. Like we'll see them on TV. Like, look, I am a city boy, just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. No, I'm not from Detroit, but here's the thing: I'm a city boy, right? I don't go near farms, but I did work at a dinner show. Dolly Parton's Dixie Stampede dinner show. Okay, it's not Dixie Stampede anymore because she took the word Dixie out of there because, racist connotations. So that's what Dolly Parton did. But I used to work for that dinner show. And one of the things that they have at the dinner show that are literally housed there are horses and buffalo. And they are comparable to cows. Those are not small animals. So when they say 400 head of cattle per hour, do you know the speed and power it takes to slaughter just one cow? You're doing 400 an hour? 10,000 chickens? And so to process at that speed is crazy. Why are they processing at that speed? Come on, sing it with me. Dun 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 dun. Money, 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 money. That's why. Because the faster you get it, that means the more product that gets put out there. That means the growth of profits. Not for the worker. No. Not for the worker. For the shareholders. For the CEO. For the CFO. For the COO. For the officers. Because they have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. So the shareholders can get a bigger cut. So this is what's happening. They're forcing these workers to work at breakneck speeds in order to put out as much product as possible. Workers be damned. Let's continue. It gets deeper.
Forcing workers to maintain high work speeds in cold conditions with slippery floors and dull knives. Workers perform between 20,000 and 100,000 cutting, grabbing, pulling, or hanging motions per shift. This causes workers great pain in their hands, wrists, arms, and backs. But when they ask for a break to rest, use the restroom, or seek medical attention, they're usually sent right back to the same job they were working before without meaningful treatment or accommodation.
I'm sorry, did he say seek medical attention? Did you catch that? Not just going to the bathroom, but to seek medical attention. If I get hurt on the job at a meatpacking plant, oh, baby, you ain't sending me back on the line. No, 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 no. Jaybe don't play that. You're not going to send me back on the line if I got severely hurt. Child, these people trying to kill you just to make an extra buck. Lord.
The speed is so unrelenting that it has forced workers to urinate or defecate in their clothing on the line because of.
Oh, here we go. So you have to use the bathroom on yourself because they won't allow you to get off that line in order to use the bathroom? Didn't we hear stuff like this from Amazon? Weren't there gruesome stories like this out of there? What makes you think it's different for the people who literally pack our meat? Inhumane practices that are being done to our fellow workers here in this country. Woo! And this is coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center. This stuff has been investigated.
Employers deny reasonable bathroom use, violating workers' rights to dignity. Other prevalent types of injuries workers suffer include lacerations, amputations of fingers or limbs, chemical burns, and skin infections, and even respiratory illnesses.
Amputations happen. I want you to think about that. People are losing limbs at meatpacking plants, and it's being exacerbated by these breakneck speeds.
Now, the United States Department of Agriculture has proposed a new regulation that would make these violations worse by permitting companies to operate poultry plant evisceration lines as fast as 175 birds per minute. The organizations petitioning the commission today, along with many other human rights groups and organized labor unions, have submitted comments to the USDA urging it to abandon this proposal and inform the agency of the human rights violations in which it will be complicit. Nonetheless, it is projected to be finalized this April 2014. This exhaustion of our domestic avenues for relief is part of why we're here before the Commission today, seeking assistance. The petitioners here today, as part of a coalition of 15 civil rights and human rights groups, have also formally asked the United States Occupational Safety and Health Administration, as well as the USDA, to promulgate safe, slower, enforceable work speed standards for meat and poultry processing plants, but we have yet to receive a response. The United States is failing to protect meatpacking and poultry processing workers from these rampant violations of human rights to safe and healthy workplaces. There is no enforceable work speed standard, and existing worker protections are inadequate to prevent the most pervasive injuries and human rights violations. Testifying before the commission were meatpacking worker Teresa Martinez, poultry processing worker Gwen Clements, Nebraska Appleseed attorney Omed Zabi, Liz Borkowski from the George Washington University Milken Institute School of Public Health, meatpacking worker Juan Martinez, and Lee Pearl Duff, who is the mother of deceased poultry processing worker Ronnie Duff. Our delegation also includes poultry processing worker LaShawn DeBabat of the Coalition of Poultry Workers, Rochelle Hammer of the Midwest Coalition for Human Rights and the University of Minnesota, Divya Prasad and April Hartsfield of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and Gloria Sarmiento and Becky Gould of Nebraska Appleseed. Thank you.
So How do you feel about the meat that you're consuming, that the workers are being treated in such an inhumane way for the sake of profit? The meat industry is controlled by most of the meat industry is controlled by only 4 companies, which means it's monopolization. And then being able to do this at these crazy speeds to put out this product really is just because, number one, these companies are way too big. Number one. Number two is there's a lack of regulation. Number three, I say that there's a lack of democracy in these workplaces. I think we should start saying it like that. There's a lack of democracy. So therefore, because there's no democracy in the workplace, that means that these establishments are run as totalitarian regimes. I would like to say it like that. Because if it was actually a democratically run workplace, would they be ran at the speeds that they are? Let's get into the article. Two amputations a week, the cost of working in a U.S. meat plant. The blurb says, as unions warn of serious injuries, plans to take speed limits off the lines at pig plants are causing anxiety. Says amputations, fractured fingers, second-degree burns, and head trauma are just some of the serious injuries suffered by U.S. meat plant workers every week, according to data seen by The Guardian and the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. U.S. meat workers are already 3 times more likely to suffer serious injury than the average American worker, and pork and beef workers nearly 7 times more likely to suffer repetitive strain injuries. And some of the fear that plans to remove speed restrictions on pig processing lines currently being debated by the government will only make the work more difficult. Government and industry bodies point out that there have been reductions in work injury rates over the last couple of decades, although the figures still remain higher than average. They argue that despite the lifting of speed restrictions, they need to adhere to strict rules on food safety that will impose its own limit on line speeds. Records compiled by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, revealed that on average, there are at least 17 severe incidents in a month in U.S. meat plants. These injuries are classified as those involving hospitalizations, amputations, or loss of an eye. Let me ask y'all something. You ever seen that game where somebody will take a knife and they'll take all their hands and they'll put it on top of a flat surface and start going da, 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 da. And then they go faster and faster between the fingers and faster and faster. How does that make you feel? Are you more able to be more precise if you go slower? If you just go between the fingers slower? Right? But the faster you go, the more the risk of you missing, right? Same concept. But then once some people say, oh, well, we just got to get regulations out of the way, because if you put regulations, that's going to stifle the business. The job creators won't be able to make as much, which means they won't be able to hire as much, which means that you won't be able to make as much. Wrong. Because if you look at it, if you look at what they're doing, they're treating workers as disposable. Because if you lose a limb, they hire somebody else. Hey, That's just the cost of doing business. No humanity involved. No compassion. Let's continue. Amputations happen on average twice a week, according to the data. There were 270 incidents on a 31-month period spanning from 2015 to 2017, according to OSHA figures. Most of the incidents involved the amputation of fingers or fingertips, but there were recordings of lost hands, arms, or toes. Toes? Toes? What in the hell? Toes? I'm gonna tell you, these people are liable to make me. My God, they're making me freak out. Record injuries include an employee's left arm had to be surgically amputated at the shoulder after it was pulled into the cubing machine during sanitation. A worker was reaching down to pick up a box to clear a jam when his jacket became caught in a roller. As he tried to pull it out, his hand got pulled in as well. His hand and lower arm were crushed. While an employee was attempting to remove the ribs from a spine of a cattle rib set, his hand made contact with a running vertical bandsaw and two of his fingers were amputated. An employee working on a sanitation crew pushed the stop button after removing parts from the upper portion of a machine. The employee then placed his foot into a horizontal grinder while climbing down from the machine, causing all 5 toes on his right foot to be amputated. I'm not going to read more because it's gruesome, but you get the point. It says chronic ailments are even a bigger issue, leaving many workers permanently disabled and leading to losses and costs, both individually and publicly. According to one published study, carpal tunnel syndrome costs more than $2 billion annually, and medical treatment costs alone for workers in all U.S. industries. Wow. Quote, every co-worker I know has been injured at some point. That was from Eric Fierstenberg. He was telling the USDA as they examine the case for implementing reforms that would include speeding up the line. I can attest that the line speeds are already too fast to keep up with. Please, I'm asking you not to increase them anymore, end quote. A meat plant worker who asked to remain anonymous told The Guardian that although he has managed to avoid injury himself, most of his friends have needed surgery at some point. If you complain about your hands, they just say you'll be fine. They want you to put ice on it during your break time or lunchtime rather than during production hours. 50-year-old worker from Nebraska says, when I get home, I have to stretch my hands. I feel a pinch. It hurts. You never get used to the work. I do it because I have to support my family. I don't have an education, end quote. Why are we treating workers like this? And don't give me the, well, they should have applied themselves better in school because if not, they should have just did something else so they can do something else. No. Workers shouldn't be treated that way. Absolutely not. There's a word that we typically try to use with workers, and it's called dignity. And you don't allow workers to look, why do we give firefighters 24 hours on and 48 hours off? Right? Why do we give some people who are in certain industries certain protections so that they can continue to keep going? Why are we making it so that we have to say too bad, so sad to these workers because they suddenly dare to get carpal tunnel syndrome? We treat them like they're just throwaways? These people are literally help feeding this country. I think they deserve a little bit more respect than that. So they say that injury had in the meat and poultry packing and processing industries had decreased significantly over the past 25 years, reaching an all-time low of 5.3 cases per 100 full-time workers per year. It says there remains, according to the Government Accountability Office, a persistent problem of underreporting. Underreporting. Meaning somebody ain't disclosing and putting in documentation of everything that happens. Also, there is loss of work. In 1994, according to BLS data, the incidence of rate for injuries from meatpacking plants was over 20. In the case of lost workday injuries, points out Mittenthal, a rate for animal slaughtering and processing was 3.8 cases per 100 workers versus 1.7 for all industries, including private, state, and local government. A number of industries have higher rates than this. However, some fear that aspects of a new system being piloted by the USDA may stall that progress. The new swine slaughter inspection program Never mind. The new swine slaughter inspection program will reallocate some of the line inspection duties and remove speed caps from the processing lines. USDA estimates it could potentially save the agency more than $6 million a year. Make no mistake, a lot of people were upset during the pandemic that, for instance, the FDA, had some people from Big Pharma were having influences allegedly into the FDA. And for instance, like the Sackler family, with their product of Oxycodone, or Oxycontin, I'm sorry. How, basically a lot of these big pharma companies basically had a revolving door at the FDA. You don't think it's not happening at the USDA? These meat packing industries, how much you want to bet they got a revolving door too? So of course they're going to favor the speeds being increased. You have certain politicians that talk about, well, they want to decrease regulation and all that. But the question is, decrease regulation at whose expense? Because the money never goes to the workers. It only goes to the owners, the parasite class. Let's finish up. Says, but the plans will lead to more injuries, believe unions and workers. When it's production at all costs, people are going to get hurt. Says there's really no need for this. Taking the caps off the line speed, there's plenty of capacity to kill plenty of pigs, but they're just getting greedy about it. And this is because we live in a system where profit reigns supreme. This is why there's consolidation among these companies. By consolidation, that means there's only 4 companies that own the majority of, overwhelming majority of the meat industry. Let me share this with you guys too, because I think it's important.
the big four meat conglomerates. They act as a middleman in the meat industry, control over 80% of beef sold in the U.S. They purchase the livestock, slaughter, and process the meat and sell it to retailers nationwide. JPS had a record annual net profit of $4.4 billion, a 70% increase from the previous year. Tyson had a record annual
70% increase over a year? Wow.
annual net profit of 4
Let's go back just a little bit.
increase from the previous year. Tyson had a record annual net profit of $4.1 billion, a 91% increase over the previous year. While their profits are soaring, ours have remained stagnant as our business costs have significantly increased. So what's the solution? By shifting to purchasing your beef direct from ranchers, you can help us change these figures and potentially help us rebuild a fairer system. But we need your help.
So it just shows how they have consolidated all their power, and it's always at the expense of workers. This is why a change needs to happen. And what does that change look like? Well, that change looks like us really fighting against this system on a fundamental level. This is why we talk about mutual aid, organizing, supporting not just unions, but supporting efforts to create worker-owned companies, worker co-ops, what have you. You can do that via, try to do that via ballot initiatives if you would like. Also, building dual power so that you can circumvent these corporations. If you know of a local farmer that already raises cows, chickens, pigs, what have you, and they actually sell the meat from them, then try to go to them as much as you possibly can locally if you have access to that. If you do have access to it, but you also know of some people who do not, maybe could you also team up with them and go in and try to get that for them? This not only helps out the local farmers and ranchers, but also you circumvent the factory farming industry as well. Because ultimately, they're doing it just for profit. They're not actually doing it because they're nice people. No, they don't want to do that way. So do what you can. If you know people who farm fresh produce, locally, or if you want to get together with your neighbors to do that, please go ahead and do that. There's many different ways that we can circumvent this, if you possibly can. If you can't, then there are other indirect ways that you can do to try to help change the system. It may not be in that industry at all, but you're fighting the fight in your sector, which, will somehow indirectly help another area within to change the system from the ground up. But this is why it is so important to speak up for workers and to constantly, be in solidarity with them. And some of these workers, there were stories came out about how there were children working in some of these meatpacking plants. Yes, children. Yes, they were violating child labor laws and having little kids work in these plants too. Some of the kids are undocumented. And let's not even get into if somebody who's undocumented, who doesn't have health insurance, gets harmed and they have to go to the emergency room. When they go to the emergency room, they don't have enough money to be actually to pay for their care, which in turn increases all of our insurance rates at the same time. So yes, essentially they get it technically for free, but who gets shafted? Everybody else is paying insurance. This is why we need a nationalized healthcare system, so that we don't get shafted if somebody gets hurt, documented or undocumented, citizen or migrant, because we shouldn't have to pay for it in that way. Now, if we collectively pay for it, in our tax dollars, okay, fine, right? But we're getting overly charged just because the insurance industry also wants to make their cut. And that's not fair either. So yes, this is why we fight on many different fronts, and I encourage you guys to continue to keep doing that. That's that story. It's crazy. Go ahead and like the stream. Yes, thank you so very much to everybody. What a beginning. All right, so we're going to go to the chat, and then we will go into our next story. Let me see, checking the rock bin. We're good there. All right. All right, so thank you very much to Jacqueline, for the super sticker. It is very much appreciated. Nice to see. Thank you. Thank you. Let me see. All right, so Andy Panda says that Colorado plant processed 1,200 cows a day. Bad working conditions, bad environmental practices, and food security. Knock out that plant and you produce a big protein supply sorry. Knock out that plant and you produce a big protein supply chain problem. Smell inside your nose says business regulations should not be conflated with human safety requirements. Business regulations should not be conflated with human safety requirements. But that's regulation. That's what the regulation is for. And my thing is like, it should be like, regulations are there for safety. And, like, for instance, there are regulations when you drive down the road. They're called traffic laws. Those are regulations for safety. We have regulations so that people do not get shafted financially or exploited or abused. Those are necessary so that people are not harmed. Now, these are necessary regulations so that, but there are also unnecessary regulations that's typically put on individuals when it comes to, like, for instance, those of us who want to apply for certain benefits from the government. There's unnecessary regulations that sometimes are put on us. And they're saying, well, we want to avoid abuse, whereas the abuse that they try to avoid is negligible. It's more freedom from regulation for corporations. But when it comes to those of us who are individuals trying to, get a benefit, there's more regulation on us than it is on corporations. It's weird. Thank you for that comment. Anisha says, I'm sure people who work in slaughterhouses do it because they have no other work choice. Who would want to work in a slaughterhouse in the first place? The thing is, it's like, look, people who work there, number one, people should really be able to have the choice. And this is why I'm a big proponent of having education for everyone. and it should not be paywalled, because if you do that, then there may be people who actually do want to work in a slaughterhouse, right? And those people who do, number one, they should get paid a living wage, a thriving wage, really. They should also be able to democratically determine how their workplace is operated. And so, but at the same time, they should be able to freely work in, and get their education. And if they want to go to a different field, then they can go to a different field. But according to like those jobs that nobody wants to do, well, then we can automate it out without risking, people not being able to have a livelihood or being able to live their lives due to automation. Automation can be a good thing, but it has to be in service of the people, not the corporations, not the parasite class. Amanda says we need to figure out how to end factory farming. I need to read Joe Stein's whole platform. I like to think we could make something more idealistic with homesteading trending in America. I think this is why we need more local farms. We need to make farms, a trend again, local farming. I'm all for that, right? I think that would be, the way to go, right? So, yeah. You said homesteading. Yeah. I'm all for more local farms. Savita says, kid using heavy machinery lost a limb and one kid died who worked in construction. And these were undocumented children released to these people who exploited them. Yeah. And they will exploit the undocumented even more because they have less protection. That's why solidarity with all workers matters, because we do not want our undocumented fellow workers to be exploited just because they're not citizens or because they're afraid of being deported. In fact, they shouldn't have to flee here because of our U.S. foreign policy in the first place. That's a whole nother conversation. But it's our U.S. foreign policy that's causing them to flee here in the first place, because you're ruining the country of origin. That's what our government is doing. That could slow that up too. Stop ruining their country. Roger Meta says, no American worker will put up with self-defecation. These have to be migrants they're taken advantage of. Unfortunately, that's what they do. All because they're trying to flee a country that was destabilized because of U.S. foreign policy. Jacqueline, does anyone think that sheer amount of fast food restaurants could be contributing to the problem? Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Hobbs says the all-time low is over 5% of their workers injured per year. What the F? Yep. Land, you said I became vegetarian for this reason. Understood. I just think we just need to get rid of factory farming. Jacqueline asks, Jaybe, you worked at a restaurant before. How much food, especially meat, did they throw away at the end of the day? We try not to throw away meat, especially because how expensive it is. And the thing is, like the food that was thrown away was food that could not be resold or was no longer edible. Like it would be like, I don't know, a piece of chicken that sat on the grill too long, right? Or it was a steak that was returned because it was well done. They wanted medium, and you can't resell it, because it already went out to the table, so you have to throw it away, things like that. Some things did get thrown away, but it was kind of negligible as to how much we threw away because, like for instance, if it was some meat that was overcooked, well done, but we didn't send it out, and then we had to refire a new one, well, then that steak could be used maybe for a salad, and we would try to use it for things like that. But that's pretty much it. At the restaurants that I worked at, they tried to minimize the amount of waste that they did. I remember working at a fast food restaurant, and I used to work at Chick-fil-A, and whatever chicken sandwiches, strips, and nuggets weren't sold, then what they would do is that they would take that chicken at the end of the night, put it in the fridge, and then somebody would come in the morning, take all the breading off, put it in a chopper, chop the chicken up, make chicken salad, and then put it in between bread and make chicken salad sandwiches to sell. So there was always some process of, okay, we have food left over, let's see if we can make it into something else. So that's pretty much it. Unless it was like fries would just get thrown out. If it sat, I think if it sat for more than like 10 minutes under the heat lamp, you couldn't sell it. We just tossed it out. But yeah, a lot of food to get tossed out, but it was more of a quality issue, And yes, Landrew says we need more unions. I completely agree. WS Violence says capitalism always revert back to plantation feudalism by default. Absolutely. Oh, Joseph. Oh my gosh. Don't get me started in this one. Joseph says all these people following the fitness trend is increasing the amount of protein people consume in a day. Everyone wants to be a buff dude like Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're not going to get me in trouble this time, Joseph. You're not going to get me in trouble. Not today. Okay. All right. Woo. All right. So and let's do one more. Marco says another reason to seize the means of production. If workers control the meat plant, it wouldn't be so terrible. Yep. I agree. Hang on. I think also Carrie Scott gave a super chat. Thank you. He says it's evident we're malevolent. We need to stop killing living beings for profit, or we won't stop war. Animal bigotry is as bad as human prejudice. So here's my thing I'm going to say. Okay. Do we need to stop factory farming and have a more ethical way of meat consumption? Yes. However, I will not shame or criticize people who still decide to eat meat. Also, there are many indigenous cultures which eating meat is part of their culture as well. So I do not want to tell indigenous cultures what's something they've been doing for hundreds or thousands of years that, oh, well, your culture is wrong. You know what I'm saying? Also, humans have been eating meat for thousands of years. We have been, consuming meat for thousands of years. I think we can do it in a more ethical way. And by ethical way, I also mean in how workers are treated when it comes to producing it. And so I think that's how it should be done, and so, yeah. But if you make a conscious decision to not eat meat, that's fine too, and, there's some people who may be on other, different sides of this, but I think people who don't want to, that's fine. People who are pescatarian, who only eat fish, that's fine too. People who are vegetarian, who want to do vegetarian, that's fine. People who are vegan, if they want to go that route, that's fine too. But yes. So, but thank you very much for that super chat. Let me see. And I think I'm going to stop there. Let's go to our next story. Oh, wait, before I do that, hang on. And the super chat. Chima Madhu says, what's your opinion of all these so-called Forex and cryptocurrency trading master teachers that have been popping up in droves on social media? They need to stop. They need to stop coming into my mentions. They need to stop telling me, well, you can get into cryptocurrency, blah, 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 blah. No. Look, please don't get me started. Don't get me started. They get on my damn nerves. And plus, here's the thing. People think, oh my God, cryptocurrency is the future. No, it's not. Because if you still have a system that is based on exploitation and profit, then of course, that's just going to be another means that people are going to use cryptocurrency in order to exploit people. You have to change the system completely. You can't just change the monetary policy. You got to change the system of production. You have to change it at this fundamental level and democratize everything. That's how you change it. Going from the dollar to cryptocurrency ain't going to do jack shot. I'm trying not to cuss. Ain't going to do jack squat. So when people come into my mentions, they're just trying to enrich themselves. So they're trying to come to me and go, hey, well, join this. So we can, because they want to increase the profits of their cryptocurrency by having more people join in. And I'm not game. And plus, ultimately, it can go up and it can fall. Meaning I'm putting at a great risk to myself when it comes to my money. But how is it helping us collectively as a species, as a planet? Anyway. But thank you very much for that. All right, so let's get into the next. Let's go into this. So just want to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon. Look, let me explain something to you. Without you guys, we would not be able to have this channel. Because ultimately, what we're trying to do is trying to do work on the ground so that we can push class consciousness, worker solidarity, and liberation for all of us, especially those of us who are marginalized. So that's one of the reasons why we do this work. And without you guys, it does not happen, because ultimately, those of us who are here at RBN, we're all workers too. And so this gives us the ability to be able to do that. Also to help do things on the ground so that we can try to do mutual aid, try to help in organizing, even if we just do organizing with other organizations, it doesn't matter as long as we're trying to build that dual power. So I just want to give a shout out to all the patrons on Patreon, and thank you so very much. Going to try to figure out, gotta start posting all the new patrons lately, but we're getting into that. We're shifting some things around here in RBN to make things more inclusive of you, the viewer, because without you, there is no us. So thank you so very much. And then we have one more from Old Pro says, thank you for all your efforts, JB. Looking forward to supporting you all at RBN. Thank you. Thank you so very much. appreciate it. All right, so what's the next story we're going to get into? Well, we're going to get into this one about the Baltimore Bridge updates. A few weeks ago, there was a ship that was transporting containers through a Baltimore bridge, and the ship collided with the bridge, causing the deaths of people who are driving on the road. This was at night. And one of the things I noticed was that the lights on the ship actually went out before it hit the bridge. It was flicking on and off. So then they missed and hit one of the pillars of the bridge. And that was big news that happened. And I know our comrade here in RBN, Savvy Sab, she has family in Baltimore. So, of course, one of the first things I thought was, does Savvy have family that may have been on that bridge? Called her. She was like, no family was on that bridge. Thank goodness. But there's an update about that story that I think that we should take a look at. That is pretty disturbing. And this is why we should have solidarity with workers, because this one is wild. So let's take a look. So it says crew trapped on Baltimore ship 7 weeks after bridge collapse. I want to stop right there. You mean to tell me that the crew is still on the ship? What in the hell? Why is the crew still on the ship? 7 weeks? Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 weeks. Over 2 months on a ship. Hang on. Okay. It says, as a controlled explosion rocked the Dolly on Monday, nearly 24 sailors remain on board below deck in the massive ship's hull. It says the simultaneous blast sent pieces of Baltimore's iconic Francis Scott Key Bridge into the dark waters of Maryland's Patapsco River. 7 weeks after its collapse, left 6 people on the bridge dead and the Dolly marooned. Authorities and crew hope that the demolition will mark the beginning of the end of the long process that has left the 21 men on board trapped and cut off from the world thousands of miles from their homes. What? But for now, it remains unclear when they'll be able to return home. It says the Dolly is a container ship, almost 1,000 feet. It says was the start of the 27-day journey from Baltimore to Sri Lanka when it struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge, sending thousands of tons of steel and cement into the Patapsco. It left the ship stranded under a massive expanse of shredded metal. A preliminary NTSB report found that 2 electrical blackouts disabled equipment ahead of the incident and noted that the ship lost power twice in the 10 hours leading up to the crash. The crew, made up of 20 Indians and a Sri Lankan national, have been unable to disembark because of visa restrictions, a lack of required shore passes, and a parallel ongoing investigations by the National Transportation and Safety Board and FBI. Wait one damn minute. You mean to tell me that these people cannot disembark the ship because they don't have passports? Because they don't have the proper documentation? The inhumanity of it all. the inhumanity of it all, because they're literally stuck on a ship because of papers, please. If these were some white dudes from Norway, I'm sure as hell they probably would have been taken off that ship by now. Let them be some white people from Belarus or from Ukraine. Or from Iceland. Oh, yeah, they would have been taken off the ship, all right. They would have been welcomed. But they brown. Oh, we can't let them out into our population, even though they were in a ship crash. What the hell? It says on Monday, the crew remained on board even as authorities used small explosive charges deliberately cut an expanse of the bridge line the ships below. So you're putting their lives at risk as well just to get the ship out of there, to get that bridge put up, but you're not willing to save the lives of the people who are on board? This is my issue with this system, because it cares more about property than it cares about the lives of people. And it's not that big of a story. Why? Because they aren't, number one, because they aren't American. Number two, because they aren't white. Let's call a thing a thing. Because if they were white, number one, it'd be a bigger story. Number two, if they were white Americans, this would be an outrage. An outrage. The fact that you got these men that's still on this ship, that it crashed, and they're still on board 7 weeks later, all because they're immigrants and don't have the proper paperwork. Does that sound humane to you? Let me ask you this question. Let's say you're in a car, and the car, you don't have proper papers, and you're traveling, you're coming from Mexico, and you come into Texas. You got through the border. You got past border security. But then you get into a car crash. You're not hurt, but you got into a car crash. But then the police don't let you out of that car because you're undocumented. You don't need medical attention, so guess what? You stay in that car because you're not documented. A lot of these people are going to make me have a conniption here on stream. I'm telling you right now. Says the crew made up of 20 Indian Sri Lankan nationals have been unable to disembark because of visa restrictions. This is some BS. It says they are part of the ship. They are necessary to keep the ship staffed and operational. Adam Gilreath said they are the best responders on board the ship themselves. It says while the ship is likely to be refloated this week, it remains unclear when it will be able to make the 2 nautical mile journey to the port. You couldn't at least get them off the ship? Let them disembark? It says among those who have been in touch with the crew is Joshua Messick, executive director of Baltimore International Seafarers Center, a nonprofit organization that works to protect the rights of mariners. According to Messick, the crew has been left largely without communication with the outside world for a couple of weeks after their mobile phones were confiscated by FBI as part of an investigation. So not only have they been stranded, but now they have no communication with the outside world, no communication with their families in India and Sri Lanka, because they're being treated as criminals because their ship crashed. Quote, they can't do any online banking. They can't pay their bills at home. They don't have any of their data or anyone's contact information. So they're really isolated right now, end quote. He says further, quote, they just can't reach out to the folks they need to, or even look at pictures of their children before they go to sleep. It's really a sad situation, end quote. The plight of sailors also attracted the attention of two unions representing them, the Singapore Maritime Officers Union and the Singapore Organization of Seamen. In a joint statement on 11th of May, the union said that the morale has understandably dipped, driven by unfounded fear of personal criminal liability and emotional distress. The statement also called for the swift return of the crew's phones, noting that losing communication with family members is causing significant hardship for crew members with young children at home. Daniel Heindel, the president of the Seafarers International Union, said that however long the investigation takes, the crew's rights and welfare should not be infringed upon. We call upon the authorities to be mindful that seafarers utilize mobile devices to conduct personal business for bill payments and, more important, transfer money to their home countries to sustain families. Crew members are becoming demoralized without the basic tools we all take for granted. Andrew Middleton, who runs Apostleship of Sea, a program that ministers to ships coming through Baltimore, told the BBC he visited sailors 2 weeks ago and found them in good spirits despite constant worries. Once we broke the ice and got everyone to say their name and what part of India they were from and talk about if they were married or had children, we got the ball rolling. They were willing to kind of poke fun at one another a little bit. We did our best to get them laughing and joking, hopefully to make take their mind off things even for a few minutes. So it says, for the time being, the crew has been given SIM cards and temporary mobile phones without data included. Oh, great. Yippee. It says they also received care packages from various community groups and private individuals, which in recent weeks have included batches of Indian snacks and handmade quilts. The BBC has reached out to the Unified Command overseeing the government's response to the Dali and the bridge collapse for clarity on when the sailors might be able to leave the ship, eventually be repatriated. Says Daryl Wilson told the BBC that the crew is holding up well and that the company representatives dispatched to Baltimore have been checking on them constantly from day one. Says all their needs are being met to the best of our ability, adding that shipments of catered Indian food have been set aboard to allow the cooks to rest. Various religious representatives, including Hindu priests, have been providing services and emotional support for those on board. Imagine being on a ship that long. Don't you get cabin fever? Don't you go stir crazy? I've never been on a cruise before. I've never been on a really big ship before, so I don't know what it's like. But one thing I can definitely tell you, I would not want to be on the ship for that long. 7 weeks. You got to be kidding me. It's always the workers that get shafted. Always. So that's what's going on with that story. This is why I say talk about worker solidarity. Here you have some workers that have experienced, a traumatic situation, your ship crashing into a bridge, and then post ship crashing into a bridge, then you're not allowed to disembark the ship in order to be on land. And on top of not being able to disembark the ship off the ship, your communication devices, your means to be able to pay your bills and contact your family are confiscated by our own government. And this is all because you don't have proper visas. It's always openness and freedom for the parasite class. But if you're a worker, they really don't care about you. This is why we need to change things. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much. Let's go into the chat. I'm going to go into the rock bin first. Let's see here. Come on, knock on my door. I'll be waiting for you. Three's Company too. All right. So thank you for the tip on Rockfin. Roger Meadows. He says anti-regulatory libertarians believe in self-regulation. People like us believe in regulations, labor law, environmental law, law and regulations that don't put communities at risk. The best way to bring the two together is worker cooperative. It is pro-worker and pro-boss class. Roger also continues, there is a federal law that allows state attorney generals to revoke corporate charters in the event of being shown that corporation has put the community and environment workers, workplace safety, and the economy at risk. You can add that law would take away any corporate charter and reissue a cooperative charter. This way, you're not building that same company from scratch, so try that. Thank you. Roger says, wait a minute. Could it be that Joseph said it's a conspiracy working in the background between the fitness industry colluding with the meat processing industry of scratch my back and I scratch yours, just like collusion between the pharmaceutical industry and the food processing industry to make sure that we stay unhealthy? However, this has backfired because it's one of the factors to slow military recruitment. Oh yeah. Here's the thing. Like, I wonder how much the meat industry grew when everybody started to do keto. When the whole keto and Atkins diet and South Beach diet and all these crazes started happening, I wonder how much more money the meat industry started making. Because that was probably really good for them. Especially the poultry industry with eggs. Oh, man. Yeah. Interesting. Let's go to the chat. Okay, we got those. This is a crazy story, man. Nutrition Heretic says, what happened to letting all illegals in? Thing is like, actually, the deportation rate under Biden has actually been higher than under Trump. Even a conservative think tank brought that out. I forget the name of it. I think it's the Cato Institute. I think they brought that out. Jacqueline says, can't they issue temporary visas or something? Like, that's a good question. Could they? I think they could, but and what about, and where is the Indian and Sri Lankan embassy in all this? Where are they? Because I would like to see that they are like, wait, okay, we can issue them temporary visas. Get a representative from the consulate onto the ship and talk to these guys. Get their information. So you can issue temporary visas so they can disembark. I mean, it is like, duh. WS Violin says if they wanted them ashore, they'd find a way. This is BS. Yes. Cena Charles says US really be treating other people as though they are NP characters. Yeah. And yeah, you just said what I said, Anisha. Yeah. Lou says they don't have visas. I've been trying to get my in-laws to come for a visit. Been waiting for 2 years for the application to be processed. And it takes forever for visas too. True Futurist says returns only for shareholders. Absolutely. Old Crow says, do you think they want them stuck on the ship so they can't be investigated fully? Because a full investigation may find that there was negligence done by the owners. Because the power kept going out in and out, that means that somebody dropped the ball. Because the power shouldn't have been going out on that ship. That tells me that budgets were cut to save money for profits. And who gets shafted? It's the workers. And now you have the workers stuck 7 weeks on a ship and unable to touch grass simply because they don't have the right visas. And who let them on board without the correct visas? Who allowed them to even work on that ship without the correct documentation in the first place? Always go to the top. Always go to the top because that's where it starts. Because they put their lives at risk too. It's always about property. Tom's Oklahoma, thank you so very much. By the way, are you indigenous? If you are, welcome. Traveler's Wolf says moral currency. Yeah. Andy Panda says not paying attention lately and did not know. Hobbs says, bruh, put the Indians or Sri Lankans in a hotel and rent that whole floor and they have it so that they can't leave the property. They do it for other categories of people. Why not stranded international workers? That's a big duh. Like, come on, man. Oh, and yes, Sinchal, we're supposed to be a so-called Christian state. And this is why I turn away from all Christianity, because this is what it is. Then it's not something I want. Look, here's the thing. Oh, the United States is a Christian nation. And then when a immigrant comes within us, then it's like, oh, we got to kick them out. Especially international workers that were not involved, but they were in an accident. But because they can't disembark because they don't have the right papers, where's your Christian spirit? Now, I'm not saying that this is indicative of all Christians, by the way. Like, there are some Christians, many Christians, who actually are very loving, very peace-loving people who actually want liberation for everybody. People like my mom, you know. So there are some really good Christians out there. I'm saying that. I'm not saying this about. I'm talking about the hypocrisy of people who call themselves Christians. Just, yeah. Thomas says America is quick to give asylum, passports, etc. to Ukrainian and white right-wing Latinos, but treat black and brown refugees and foreign workers with estrangement. Bingo. Whoop, there it is. Wow. Traverse Wolf says you don't need a visa when you're a mariner. Woo, boy. Sina Chow says, side question, what happened at Morehouse? I don't know. My mom was watching TV and Joe Biden was on the TV giving the commencement speech at Morehouse. I had asked her if was there any students that had walked out that she know of. There's a lot of the graduates wearing keffiyehs and Palestinian flags and stuff like that. I don't know if any walked out. I didn't get to see anything before I went live. I wish that I did, and I hope some Morehouse graduates walked out. I don't know if they did, or at least some would stand up and start protesting. To be honest with you, Joe Biden shouldn't have been able to say a word during that speech, and I didn't hear anything in the background. So yeah. That's so far as I know. And the valedictorian, he gave a speech basically calling for a permanent ceasefire. If I were him, I would have went stronger. I would have said not just a permanent ceasefire, but a liberation of Palestinian people to end the occupation and the apartheid. I would have said all that right in front of Joe Biden. And then after my speech, I wouldn't have shook Joe Biden's hand. I would have looked him up and down and then walked right past his ass. Because guess what? He's the one that's actually perpetuating this genocide as we speak. Joe Biden deserves no respect from any of us. And any of you at Morehouse that went to run to shake Joe Biden's hand, I would have skipped his ass completely. He does not deserve any respect from you. And furthermore, Joe Biden is also one of those people that made it so that the mass incarceration was perpetuated in this country. Also, his racist ass eulogized Strom Thurmond. So guess what? Joe Biden don't deserve no respect from no self-respecting black person in this country. No, absolutely not. Joe Biden is just the less orange version of Donald Trump. Yeah, I said it. They are one of the same, cut from the same cloth. But yeah, I didn't get to watch it totally. So let's get into the next story. So I want to get into this. We're doing good on time. We are going to talk about this story regarding Black women, the missing and murdered Black women and girls. A new office is being opened. I am excited for this. It is sad that in this country, if you are a Black woman or a girl and you go missing, how many people really know about it? If you are missing due to exploitation and human trafficking, people don't really pay you much attention. And we have been screaming at the mountaintops for this for years. Black women have been screaming about this for years. And not too many people have been listening. And I think it's important that we listen. Look, I will say this with my full chest, 10 toes down. Every single time some BS in this country happens, we got the warnings from Black women for years before it happens. They'll be saying, hey, y'all may want to pay attention to this because this is a bad thing. And then people will neglect ever hearing what they say until it affects all of us more broadly. Then that's when Black women go, we told you so. And I think it's important that we listen to them more and more now, because this is important. So I'm going to share this story because I'm happy that this is happening, because we need this. We need this desperately. So it says, first director of state's missing and murdered Black women and girls office save one girl. So I want to give a shout out to Sabby for sharing the story with me. This is a positive story that I can't wait to dive into. This is out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. It says Minnesota made history by establishing the first missing and murdered Black women and girls office in the country. I'm going to say that again. The first missing and murdered Black women and girls office in the country. It is 2024. Black people have been in this land for 500 years. And this is the first missing Black woman and girls office ever. I want you to sit with that for a second. All right, let's continue. Now we know who will lead the groundbreaking unit, the Department of Public Safety, named Keila Burks, as its first director. She says she knows there's work to do. Black women and girls make up 7% of Minnesota's population, but are 40% of domestic violence victims. They are 3 times as likely to be murdered as their white counterparts. My lofty goal is to be an example. Save someone. Save one girl. That's what she says. It's a role where she knew she could have an impact. The opportunity to help people and give people a voice who look like me, who historically their voice has been marginalized and been silenced. Burke says she saw disparities at a young age. It shaped her lens in life. She says, just as a citizen, usually when young white women go missing, they're plastered across the news nationally. When I've seen Black children or Black girls go missing, it's more feet on the ground, putting people up flyers and posters, but they're not getting this national media coverage. This is true. Black girl goes missing, crickets. White girl goes missing, everybody's like, where are they at? Where are they at? Where are they at? Where are they at? And we have seen this time and time and time again. If you guys are on Twitter, you guys will notice if somebody puts out a missing child, especially if that missing child is Black, I'm retweeting it. Because how often are missing Black kids, how often are they talked about? if a young black girl goes missing, there's amber alerts. There's also silver alerts for the older people. What about older black people, older black women that may go missing? Especially those who have Alzheimer's or dementia. How much are they overlooked? Let's continue. She has a bachelor's degree and master's degree in criminal justice. She's been an advocate for kids in family court. Someone with this newly created office will focus on is getting a better understanding of the problem by collecting data, reviewing cases, and setting guidelines, and working on legislation. Awareness, treating cases in a similar fashion, giving them the same resources. The office will work alongside law enforcement to investigate cold cases. Other cases could be reopened. Says they'll coordinate searches when black women and girls go missing. Burke says she's heard stories from families around the state, and that drives her purpose. One of the things that I think will also help this is that if we have a new system of public safety, meaning defund the police and abolish the police as we know it, to have a new public safety apparatus that is inclusive of all people and that does not marginalize those of us who have a little bit more melanin in our skin, because that's important too. Because if you have a system of policing that's built on white supremacy, then of course they're not going to give a damn about black women and girls. So this is why we also need to rebuild our public safety systems in this country too. Now, while this is a good thing, I would say we still need to defund the police on the road to abolishing this system of policing that we have at this point and rebuild it anew so that it is inclusive of all people. Also, let's not forget, and some of y'all are not going to like me for this, but it is what it is because I'm going to say it with my whole chest. We also need to protect our black trans women and femmes too, because they also go through this too. And it is not right that they get overlooked over and over and over. They are workers too. They are people too. They are the proletariat too. I'm going to tell you right now, when I say Black Lives Matter, I mean all black lives, not just the ones who fit some people's narrative. Let's continue in this story. Quote, it's devastating. It's heartbreaking. It's almost a situation where you don't know how you're going to rebound from it. And hopefully this office can be the type of support that they can move through these very heartbreaking circumstances. She hopes that the work that they can hear speaks to other states. So they said the next step is to hire about 5 staff members. Burke says it will take time to find the right people with the right hearts. A bill to create a task force to study the problem in Wisconsin has stalled this legislative session. So that is a good news. One of the things that we have to talk about is why this is absolutely necessary. Black women and girls are constantly, going missing, and people do not give it much attention. I want to share this. This is from Al Jazeera. Let's go here.
Barely make their headlines. So our question today is not why does that happen? We all know why that happens, but what can be done about it? In recent years, communities, families have been involved with somebody who's been loved, who's gone missing or even murdered. They have rallied around to protect Black women. Let me give you one example. It's an HBO documentary called Black and Missing.
So I'm not going to play the documentary preview because unfortunately, I do not want us to get a copyright claim. But yes, we actually have to raise the alarms for this because Black women and girls go missing so often, and yet this deeply underreported in this country.
Missing people, except Black folks spit and grit.
So helping us share this story with you, this issue with you on the stream, Alex, Aisha, Amara, thank you so much for being part of our program. Alex, please introduce yourself to our global audience. Tell them who you are, what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Alexandria Noah. I'm the Director of Political Advocacy at Black Boston, a community organization, and a doctoral student at Suffolk University studying youth development.
It's good to have you. Aisha, I want you to introduce yourself to our stream audience, but also tell them your connection with this particular issue, Black women going missing, not being reported enough.
My name is Aisha Miller, and September 11th, 1986, my mother was kidnapped and murdered, as well as my oldest sister, who was 18 years old at the time. And for 21 years, we didn't know what happened to them. And it wasn't until the cold case detectives worked that case in 2007, 2008, where they found him, and he was already in prison for having done the same thing to another young lady just 2 months after they kidnapped him. He kidnapped and murdered my mother and sister. So now what I do is host a show that reflects and focuses on the effects of childhood trauma on adult behavior.
Aisha, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you being on today's show, bringing your personal experience and sharing it with us in our show. I'm going to bring in Amara. Amara, thanks for being on the stream. Again, please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them who you are and what you do.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. My name is Amara Kofer, and I am the creator, host, and executive producer for Black Girl Gone, a true crime podcast.
Thank you so much. All right, so we have three guests who are able to answer your questions, really dig into this topic. It's a hard conversation to have, but if you're on YouTube right now, your comments, your questions, I welcome them. You can be part of the discussion. Alex, let's start. Alex, Amara, Aisha, let's start with giving our international audience an idea of what it is like when you see coverage of, if you see coverage of Black women who've gone missing, or maybe something tragic has happened to them. Just in a nutshell, Alex, can you help our international audience understand what it is like?
Yeah. What I can say, when a Black woman or girl is gone missing, there is not equitable coverage. And I think a lot of people understand white woman missing syndrome, which was coined by African-American journalist Gwen Ifill back in 2004. And this was basically at aligning with that same sentiment, is that when Black women and girls are missing, there is a lack of urgency. But when it's someone that is white, or in other words, or not in other words, but what people will say is conventionally attractive white woman, that all of that image is important. And when people view that, oh, it's like this person is viewed soft. So it really goes back to the depictions of Black womanhood and Black girls, how society has trained our mind to think about Black women and girls. And I think that reflects on how our law enforcement treats Black girls. We've been trained to view them in a certain way. So there is not equitable coverage. And I think that's one of the reasons why, is because there's a lack of protection. We are seen as, we're not valuable to society.
This is something I think this needs to be harped on, because when you are seen as invaluable, as not valuable to society, then you are considered as a throwaway. And it's also easy to dehumanize them also as well. Speaking as a Black man, I know how that is. So Black women are also, as far as the social hierarchy in this country, Black women are at the bottom. I say Black women, Black trans women, and Black femmes are at the bottom. And so the problem is that we need to start seeing ourselves in them, but we don't, because it's constantly perpetuated. And this keeps a hierarchy in place, and this keeps a divide in place so that the system continues, so that everybody keeps being exploited. But some people feel a little bit better because they're higher on that ladder than the rest. So we black men, we feel a little bit better because we're not way down there as black women, even though we have a foot on our necks. It's not as bad. So at least we're not black women, right? This is why solidarity and intersectionality, I know some people don't like that word, but it's a real thing. Intersectionality is important. This is why it needs to be talked about, right? And then on top of it, because we're seen as less than, then when we talk about pay disparities, wealth disparity, then it's more of a put yourself up by your bootstraps, right? This is why, if you're white, you need to have solidarity with the rest of us. Because if they're willing to get behind. So, yes. Let's continue.
I see you nodding, Amara. Articulate that, Noel. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's exactly correct. It's one of the reasons why I started my show. But we all know that there is a lack of coverage of these stories, but there's a lack of concern. And, one of the excuses that, people often make is that when they elevate the stories of missing white women like Gabby over again was that she was so relatable and that they could see themselves in her and they could see their daughters in her or their friends in her. And they don't see that when Black women are missing, and that's a problem. And it's the way in which their stories are covered. It's the way in which we don't get into their lives. We don't find out who they are. And so, how could someone connect to them if we don't know these women? So, that's why I wanted to do a show that focuses more on telling who these women were, so that you can eliminate the excuse of, well, I can't relate to that, or, we can all relate to each other, even if it's just that we are women, you know what I mean? Like, we all have different struggles, we all come from different places, but some of our struggles are the same, and we can relate to each other, in a way that makes these stories more real for people and more, something that they care about. I think that's what makes the difference.
So Gabby Petito was a young white woman who eventually was found to have been strangled. That story was on cable news almost every night. It was like a running tragic soap opera. Aisha, what do you want to add here?
My question is, do we hear about it? Do we actually hear about it? It comes on, but it's a blip in the news. It comes on maybe one news cycle, one or two. I know, at least for my family, maybe a week. That was about it. And until we started raising our voices and going to the police more often, we wrote to everybody, every news outlet, not just news outlets, television programs, major networks that were on at that time. And nobody paid attention. No one gave us any credibility. So what I know and understand is that nobody listens. well, very few people listen. I won't say no one, but now I'm grateful that we have more opportunities to do that, such as the different platforms, such as Miss Black Girl Gone and my own, that we're able to bring a voice and bring the voices alive and let them know that we are human. Just like my mom, even today, this is 35 years. This has taken me 35 years to even talk about to the degree that it needs to be talked about for me, because it's so personal. It was so hurtful.
Femi, I can't. Sorry.
So Aisha,
I'm sorry.
you sent us this picture. You sent us several pictures. One is you are the spitting image of your mum. Okay, so everyone, this is Aisha's mum. This is a little, I'm going to say baby girl, but you were about 9 at the time. This is you, Aisha, and you lost your mum and your sister in a tragic situation, and you had about a week's worth of attention from the media, and that was it. Why did they move on? Why didn't they stay with this story?
At that time, they wanted to accuse my father, because generally in a domestic case, they want to pin it on a relative, somebody that they knew. So it went unnoticed. And because they couldn't connect him to it, they had no DNA. It wasn't that popular back in 1986, but they couldn't pin him. And so they couldn't conclude the matter for him. And so it just went cold. The case went cold. And unfortunately and regretfully, the Tommy Lee Stewart, who was the assailant, he did the same thing to another young lady just 2 months after that. She lived. And because she lived, she's the reason why we know what we know today.
So yeah, and there was a oh my God, what's his name? They did a Netflix show about him, but he was targeting Black people, and a lot of Black people that he was targeting were Black gay men. So yeah, that's very similar, but the thing is like, because it's not as cared about, it is absolutely necessary for us to care about it, because it's people, man. So I think that this is a good thing. I think we need more. Jeffrey Dahmer. Thank you, Dr. Donnie. Yes, Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, everybody talked about that, And why did he get away with what he got away with? Because his victims were Black, largely. So we have to change the system. Thomas says, I believe a Black civil rights bill is needed that combats and gives justice to the missing Black women issue. This needs specific focus on the cause and effect and how to fix. Absolutely. I think that we need this to happen, because the thing is, unfortunately, when it comes to us, we don't have bills like this. Like, for instance, they did a bill for anti-Asian and Pacific Islander hate, which I agree with. We should have those bills. But where's the one specifically for Black people? Right? Where's, like, for instance, they'll do a hate crime bill. Like, they passed one for anti-Semitism, right? To to go according to a different definition of anti-Semitism, which is really just anti-Jewishness. And then they want to include being anti-Zionist and as being anti-Semitic, which is absolutely wrong, because Zionism and Judaism are two different things. But that's what Congress passed. But where's the anti-Blackness flaw? I don't see that. So, of course, I think it's important that we do this. Let me see. Young Black Economist says, can we expect that to change? Maybe get some Black women in those positions maybe we shouldn't talk down to them when they do, I don't know, well, here's the thing. Not just only get Black women in those positions, but also Black women that don't push the same system, right? Because would you trust Kamala Harris in that position? I'm just saying, because the thing is that Kamala Harris is one that will continuously perpetuate this system. She still has that internalized white supremacy within her, right? My thing is like, for instance, it's just like, when it comes to us Black men, like, would I trust somebody like Tim Scott? Because he'll still push the same white supremacist system. But of course, because Black faces in high places don't save us either. But it still needs to be done regardless. I just think we as a people need to be careful with who we put in those positions too. But yes, thank you, young Black economist, for that. Brent Hudgens says, I sure hope this news turns those stats around for the Black community. Me too. I really do have high hopes for that too. So yeah. Oh man, I'm running late. But yes. The Bandit Dipsheet says, I'm happy for this new department. It's about time. Now let's address the insane rates of MMIP, because they have the highest rates and smallest demographic. MMIP, is that indigenous? I never heard of that acronym before, MMIP. But yes, thank you very much. I feel you. All right. Tima says, how do you feel about these so-called Black feminist and Black girl divestment platforms that openly denigrate and demonize Black men and boys? Oh boy. You asked me a very large question. So-called Black feminist and Black girl divestment platforms that openly denigrate and demonize Black men and boys. Look. One of the benefits of doing the readings that I do on my channel is that I read books like The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. One of the things that, and some people would say, oh my God, that's a feminist book. And the thing is that Bell Hooks really does get it. Because Bell Hooks will talk about how patriarchy not only harms women, but it also harms us men too. And she even criticizes the more new wave feminists as well, because they don't make an effort to truly understand how patriarchy harms men as well. How we're told that we need to separate ourselves from our emotions, from being fully functioning, fully emotionally well-rounded human beings. Because ultimately, the system, whether it's white supremacy, capitalism, and all that, it also dictates to us men to sever ourselves from our hearts. And then it tells, particularly a lot of white feminists, that, well, men are inherently the problem. When in reality, no, it's patriarchy is the problem. And by that, meaning that it subjects us to being less human, and therefore it only encourages us to be this abusive robotic form that they want us to be, so that they can use us as cannon fodder for their imperialism, as automatons working in their factories. That's basically what it is. So when it comes to Black feminists and Black girl divestment platforms, if they're openly denigrating and demonizing Black men and boys, I think that's tragic. I think that's sad. These are the gender wars that are happening all over, which are pushed really just to keep us separate. It's to keep us hating one another, when in reality, it's not male versus female. It's not even really that much left versus right. It's up versus down. It's top versus bottom. It's the parasite class versus the host class. We are the host class. They're the parasites. And they're trying to keep a division in place. And unfortunately, some Black people fall for the division. And they will get some of us Black men saying, well, Black women, they don't bring enough to the table and they expect all this. They want us to be just ATMs. And then they get Black women going, well, these Black men, they ain't nothing. All they do is care about, this, that, and the third. And then they'll talk about, how we expect, more than what we should. And it's all these different things about how we fighting each other. In reality, we're being pitted against one another, just like you're getting pitted against your fellow workers who may be undocumented, your fellow workers who may be LGBTQ, your fellow workers who may be disabled. You're constantly being pitted against one another. This is why we need to have solidarity and understanding with one another, and realizing, and also not just respecting one another, but also seeing others who may be more marginalized and seeing how they're marginalized, and try to push away that narrative, right? Push away, not the narrative, but push away the thoughts and ideas that cause them to be oppressed. We have to come together in order to break this system apart and rebuild it from anew. And we can't do it separately. So it's just a means of division. And I don't think that it does us any good. But yeah. Okay, so and yes, Young Black Economist says, yeah, it's a misogynoir that women don't like, but I do also see lots of Black women talking down to poor Black boys that just need some direction. Yeah. And it's up to us men to direct our boys in a good direction. So I think that's important. Mikhail says patriarchy does harm men, mostly working class men and men who don't fit the bourgeois stereotype of being a man. And yes, Sabs, I didn't even get a chance to get to my final story. Gosh, I might have to do this next story in a little bit. I'm probably just gonna have to cut this off. I had a hard stop at 3 and I went over. So I really want to do the story. I'm gonna do the story really quick. I'm gonna take like 5 more minutes and then do this really quick story because I really need to get this done. And I don't want to miss this out because it's literally the first thing on here. So we're gonna do this really quick. So UAW actually is striking for Palestinian protesters. Let's get into this really quick because I have to go. And apologies, guys, but I'll only be able to read super chats and the last comments. for this one, but I want to make sure that I get this in here because it's on the thumbnail, and I want to make sure I do this. Okay, so this is UAW 4811 authorizes strike over response to Gaza encampments. So it says the union representing UC academic workers across the state of California authorized a strike on Wednesday evening in response to law enforcement crackdowns on encampments set up at college campuses in support of Gaza. It says after a 3-day strike authorization vote, the UAW 4811 announced it had enough votes. 79% of participating members voted in favor. The union represents 48,000 workers across 11 campuses. Last week, the union held a rally protesting the encampment crackdown at UCSD, saying it violated workers' rights to free speech. The vote gives the union's executive board the authority to call a strike at any moment. However, it would just be a stand-up strike, meaning that if circumstances are justified, not all workers will be called to walk off the job. Instead, certain campuses could be called to strike at certain times. The union says there are 8,000 UAW members at UCSD who need to speak up now so that what happened to break up encampments doesn't happen again. The union says its executive board will evaluate on Friday and announce whether they call for the first campus or campus strike. So far, UCSD nor the UC system has responded to the strike authorization. So right now they are trying to strike, which I think is absolutely a great thing. This is absolutely necessary because right now what's happening, especially across college campuses, absolutely needs to happen. And, you know, the fact that UAW is coming together in solidarity with the strikers for Palestine is absolutely beautiful. I think that more unions need to also do this as well. It's absolutely imperative that we also have solidarity with our Palestinian siblings right now. And then also, can we start doing this for people in Sudan, as well as in Congo and in Haiti? I think we possibly can. I think that's one of the best things that we possibly can do, especially in this country, because it is absolutely necessary. Let me go to the chat to see if there's any super chats. If there's any super chats, then I will get to those. But if not, then I have to run. Nope, I think we're good. Okay, so I got to get to that. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. Thank you to all the people on Patreon for your donations and support. It is very much appreciated. I would like to say salutations to all of you. Look, water your plants, water yourselves, leave your world better than you found it. And mwah, mwah, forehead kisses to every single one of you. You guys have yourself a wonderful day. Peace in the world, and continuously do the best you possibly can to make the world better. And hey, listen to Black women, y'all. It means a lot.